Facebook. Trying to work out what date it is today. I think it's the 28th of December. Feels a bit like Blur's Day. Happy Christmas. Yeah, kind of feels a bit like, don't know what day of the week it is, but also feels strangely normal. Anyway, I've just hopped on live, bit impromptu, didn't advertise I was going to go live, just because I found myself at a loose end and I wound up in my craft room and I thought, you know what, I could actually do a demo. So here I am. Not sure if I am actually live because I don't currently have an audience. But anyway, I shall carry on regardless. I'm going to do one tiny sneak peek from the new mini catalogue, which will be starting on the 4th of January. That's only next Tuesday, so a week to go before I can actually open this catalogue and show you what's inside. At the same time, our annual celebration promotion will be going live, so that's next Tuesday as well for 2 months. And again, we're embargoed from actually opening the publications live, but not embargoed from showing you the actual products. So I have a basket of products that I've already got from both catalogues, and I'm just going to show one small product today, and then next Tuesday I'm hoping to come on and do a live with another project. So I'm just going to make a card. I'm going to sit down and make a card. And the card I'm going to make is a card that I made for my nephew, whose birthday was on Christmas Eve. And I posted it on social media once he'd received it, and I had a couple of really nice comments. So I thought I would jump on and just demonstrate how I actually made the card. So that's what I'm going to do. So I will just take a seat and craft away as if I was just hopping into my craft room really, and hopefully 1 or 2 people might join me, and if you don't, then that's not a problem. I will post the live on my Facebook page and on my YouTube channel, and you can watch later on catch up, because that's what we do over Christmas and over the holidays. We watch things live and sometimes we watch them on catch up. So I've picked out 3 shades of green, and that again, that makes a change from the 50 shades of grey weather that we're having. So I've picked out Soft Seafoam as my palest green ink, Soft Succulent, and then I've gone dark with Evening Evergreen, and they're the inks I'm going to use, along with I'm going to use some Versamark for the sentiment and some copper embossing. And I'm going to use Soft Succulent cardstock for my base. Oh, somebody's watching, yay, so I must be live, that's good. At least I know the tech's working. So I'm going to use Soft Succulent as my card base, and I'm also going to use a white layer. So let me just pop that cardstock to one side, just move my ink to one side. And I'm going to make a tall skinny card, but I'm going to make it a very slightly different size to what I usually do, because here we go, sneak peek, we have some new envelopes in the mini catalogue. Oh, hi Michelle. And thank you, I did have just a very peaceful Christmas. I hope you and yours did too. So this is a sneak peek from the January to June mini catalogue. We have a new pack of envelopes. I'm just going to reach for them and I can tell you how many are in a pack. So there are 15 envelopes, and the colours in the pack are basic white, soft succulent and smoky slate. And they're these tall, thin envelopes. So ordinarily when I make a tall card I would use the English DL size envelope. So you can see I'm just going to compare. They're almost the same length but ever so slightly narrower. So I'm going to just adapt my card base to be just ever so slightly narrower. What I like about these envelopes is this gorgeous scalloped flap, and they are printed inside, and they're actually printed all the way down inside with this quite gender neutral pattern. I really like this. But one thing I thought about this was once it has a gummed closure, once it's been gummed and stuck down, the recipient won't know that it's got a nice patterned inside. So I actually went ahead already and adapted the smoky slate one. But I will show you, I'm going to use this soft succulent, and I will show you how I did that so we can actually use some string. If we're obviously hand delivering the card, we can use string as a closure or twine. Not just string, it's not just any string, it's twine. So I will show you that, and the white is the same, that has a black printed inside. So I'm just going to pop those totally to one side, and so let me give you some measurements. Just get my ruler, and I'm going to share with you that the envelopes are in fact 9.9 centimetres in width. So I'm going to adapt my regular tall thin card size. So let me grab the trimmer. So usually I will take an A4 piece of cardstock and I will trim off 10 centimetres, which would leave me, the remainder would be just shy of 20. But what I'm going to do this time is, as this envelope is 9.9, I actually want my finished card to be 9.5 wide. So 2 9s are 18 and 1 is 19, so I'm actually going to cut my, use my extending, and I'm going to cut my cardstock down to 19 centimetres on the landscape. I'm going to pop this piece to one side because I can always use this to decorate. I'm just looking whether that's actually in focus or not. What's going on with my camera? Not sure whether that's focusing. Oh, Michelle, if you're still watching, can you tell me whether this is in focus? I have actually got my reading glasses on, so it's always a bit difficult when I'm standing up and towering over the camera on a stand. Can you tell me whether this is in focus or not on my desk? As I was saying, I'm going to pop this to one side because I can use this on another project. And I'm going to score this piece now at 9.5 centimetres. And that will give me, it is in focus, that's brilliant. It must be my reading glasses that are dirty. That's hilarious. So that gives me my card base, and as you can see, that's going to fit nicely in my new envelope. It will be a bit snug, but it will fit nicely in my new envelope. And I'm going to cut myself a layer for the front, which I'm going to, I've got this piece that was in my drawer that was obviously an offcut from a previous card, and I'm just going to trim that down, and I want that to be, let me just think, I think I'll have that with just a centimetre or so. I'll cut that down to be 8.5, and I will just take a little bit off the top. So at the moment that will be 21 centimetres, so I'm going to cut that down to 20 centimetres. So I've just reduced the whole size by a centimetre all round, and that can be my front layer, and that's the piece that I'm going to stamp and decorate. So as I haven't got, obviously, the card that I made for Nathan to hand to show you as the sample, I'm going to try my best to replicate this both from memory and from the photo that I saved of it. And the card had 3 circles which I blended ink into, and then I made a collage decoration just using different stamps. And what I want to say about these cards, often we struggle to make masculine cards, and I've titled this a gender neutral card because it would equally suit female or male recipient. And I want you to not overlook your floral stamp sets. I made a card which I will post another picture of maybe in comments, using a very similar design using the Art in Bloom, and I used the leaf and this image and a sentiment, a birthday sentiment for a male friend birthday, and instead of doing the circles as blended circles, I actually used die cut circles to stick onto my base card. I really love this leaf image. It's very, for me, it's very much like a fine liner pen drawing, and I really like that kind of image. For this card, I'm going to use the typed script, probably some of the ink spots because they're really useful, and possibly the happy birthday sentiment. I might just dive into another floral, no, another pretty stamp set, and I may just use this. On the original card that I made for Nathan, I actually used this. I may or may not use this on this image, this leaf image, on this one, because what I do want to use is a piece of die cut foil using the leaf. This is a fantastic artistic dies from the Artistically Inked bundle, and this die I have used so much. It's huge, as you can see. It's a really nice big leaf, and it die cuts gorgeously in foil, so I'm going to die cut that in copper foil. So I'm going to do some copper heat embossing as well. So let's crack on. The first thing I did when I made Nathan's card, and this is the piece actually that I used, was found a piece of scrap. I've got some pieces of old washi tape, a piece of scrap card, and I used my layering circle dies, and I cut 3 circles from this to use as a mask or a stencil for my ink blending. I'm going to do exactly the same. Now I'm going to flip this because I don't want to pick up any of the green inks that I used on Nathan's card. I want to start again. So I'm going to now take a seat and I'm going to grab my blending brush that I tend to use for green and blue tones. I'm also just going to grab out of my drawer my microfiber cloth, which has had a bit of a Christmas present because I gave it a wash. I'm often not very good at cleaning tools, but I had a bit of a purge this week and cleaned a few. Didn't clean my brushes, so I will just make sure I've got no residue of ink on my brush. And apologies, I'm not appearing on camera today because although I'm clean washed and paid for and I've got a bit of makeup on, I did go out earlier to the supermarket in the horrendous rain, so I've got hair like a dog's breakfast after that escapade. So I'm going to blend ink through the 3 different sized circles, and it really doesn't matter where you start because I'm going, for this card, I'm going to overlap the circles. I'm probably going to start up in the top third. So I'm going to just place my mask there, and I'm going to anchor it down using this previously used washi tape, and I'm going to concentrate on this circle, and I'm going to work lightest to darkest. So I'll use the which one was this? Soft Seafoam. And for my blending technique, I used to sort of dab and sort of pounce the brush all over my ink pad, and recently I've started to actually use a circular motion to pick the ink up, and I just find I get a more equally distributed ink. And I always just do start off but then quickly blend around. And because I'm ink blending and I'm going to overlap the circles, I'm not too fussed if it kind of appears a little bit, what's the word, splodgy, I suppose. I'm just taking care to also put some pressure on the card, even though it's held for slipping with the washi tape. I'm also putting some pressure on because I'm aware that my cardstock, my white cardstock underneath, is not anchored. I'm just trying to stop that from slipping around with the pressure of the blending brush. I've got quite good coverage there. I will just pop a little bit, maybe down at this end. I'll just give that a little bit of a clean. Although because I'm working from lightest to darkest, it's not that imperative. I still don't want to contaminate one shade of green to the next on my ink pad. So I'm moving up to Soft Succulent now, and I'm just going to remove the mask. You can see my lovely circle. I'm going to now go to the middle size, and I'm going to overlap it and probably move it across to one side as well. So I can see I've overlapped it and I've kind of moved it across. And again, I'm going to stick that down. I'm taking care to stick it to the desk, and like I say, I'll keep my hands on the actual piece of scrap card or the mask. I'll just pick up some soft succulent ink and we'll just start to blend that on. So it was really lovely when I checked back on my Instagram feed and saw that somebody had given me a really lovely comment about the card that I posted that I'd made for Nathan's birthday. And I just, oh, I've just moved that. I wasn't holding that still, but I think I've got away with it. Let me just really hold that down. And so I replied and said, well, perhaps I should do a demonstration. And I think it was Bev said, oh, yes, please. So I thought, well, why not? I'm in my craft room. I've come in here to do some crafting. Why not repeat that card? I enjoyed making it. And yeah, it's nice to get a nice comment back. Now I'm trying to decide whether to do 3 or 4 circles. If I go down a circle, I've not really got a lot of coverage. So maybe shall I go back up to another big circle? I think I probably will, and then I can stick with just 3 circles. I think on Nathan's I did larger to smaller, and I can't remember actually whether I did 3 or 4 circles, but I think for this one I will stick with 3 circles, and I'm just going to go back up to the biggest size. Or should I? Oh gosh, decisions. I think I will go back to the biggest, and I might pop in. I'm going to overlap them again, and I'm going to come over this side now. I think actually what I am going to do is just grab my washi tape. I'm going to use this one that's less tacky, and I will hold that bottom layer down. It might just hold it in place. And I'll get some fresh, this is just a really old washi tape from, gosh, I don't know how many years ago, that I just used for this kind of project. So let's go back with the biggest circle. Let's overlap it again, but come over to one side, back over to the right hand side. And let's now go in with the darkest green, which is Evening Evergreen. This is a lovely dark green. Again, I'll just take off any residue of that soft succulent, and I'll just pick up some ink there, and we'll go in thing about blending is just to keep going until you're entirely happy with what you've got, and bear in mind that actually the circles won't be the focal point on the finished card. So for you perfectionists out there, don't worry if it's a bit blotchy, just go with it. It's going to be very much a collage type card design. Now I'm going to, quite excited, I'm going to have a look and see whether I've covered enough of my card base, whether to leave it at 3 circles or whether to go a bit further down with another small one. I think I am actually going to leave it with 3 blended circles and a blob from my finger, because I am actually going to stamp some other bits on there. I'm not worried about that blob, I can cover that, but it is something to bear in mind when you're handling dark colours with ink pads. So I'm just going to clean that brush, because I absolutely love collage stamping. And what do I mean by collage stamping? That is building up a collage of images from different things, so in particular text, script. I've loved this Quiet Meadow stamp set so much. I've used these little flowers, because I want this to be gender neutral. I'm going to just use the script and the ink spots, and that's how I'm going to disguise that blob. I don't think I'm going to use these two, but I could do, because I feel that these are a bit more graphic than these 2 images. So I'm going to put this stamp set to one side. This stamp set has these little dots as well, and actually the leaves may form another piece of imaging for the background, so I might just go in, but we'll see how we get on. So let's first of all pop these stamps on blocks. Let's pop this ink spot. Let me see, I think it just fits on that block. That's a block D. And I'm going to go in, I'm going to just find a piece of scrap. I've just got some scratch paper here from the printer, and that'll allow me just to do some stamping off and stamping on. I'm going to go in with my middle colour, which is soft succulent, and I'm going to do some stamping off, stamping on. So I'll make sure that I've got my script the right way up. And I'm just going to do 2, 3 generations. I think I prefer second generation. So I'm going to stamp off once, and I'm going to stamp on randomly, sort of half on, and maybe do a bit more. Now I do need some more scratch paper because I haven't got a grid sheet, and this desk surface is washable, so sometimes I get ink residue. So let's stamp off and let's go back in. I'm going to stamp fairly randomly just across that background. I'm not even worrying about whether I'm straight with my text. Let's see if I can mask that blob. It's not too bad. And then I'm going to go in with my ink spots, and I might go in with my darkest colour with the ink spots. Let's see if I can just rectify that scrap paper. I think I'm alright now. Should I just find a grid sheet? I've got various grid sheets underneath my desk, all in half-used states. I'm sorry, I'm talking off camera, mumbling down below. Let me just grab a grid sheet pad. Let's go up on a grid sheet. That's what they're there for. And get rid of these faffy bits. Here we go. So I'm going to stamp off, stamp off, stamp off, and just decide which generation, I think I'm still on camera there, yes I am, which generation of stamp I actually prefer. And I think I prefer the third stamp, so I'm going to stamp off, and then stamp on. Stamp off, and then stamp on. Just really random. Give it a huff, try that one. See how that just revives the ink, and really just stamping over the top. I don't want too much white space, so I don't want too many blobs, but I'm quite happy with that. Now let's see, I wonder what these leaves might look like stamped underneath. It's a bit of a risk, I really don't know. Let's chuck one on a pad and see, and because it feels a bit risky, I might go back to the lightest ink. So let's just close that one up, and we'll have a look. Now let's have a look, and we can stamp on the grid sheet. That's quite nice and pale, so I think what I might do is just stamp like that. Yeah, it's quite nice. And we'll just have some leaves. Can't believe I just stamped off there. You see, I've got in the habit. And sometimes you only need a tiny bit of an image just to fill in a white space, and I might just totally risk it and do a full one there. So I'm quite happy with how that's built up in the background. I absolutely love doing this kind of collage background. Now on the original card I did use Very Versailles, and I stamped this big branch and I heat embossed it in gold, but then I felt it had got a little bit lost in the background because I then actually die cut my big, I've already got it out, my big leaf in gold foil. I'm going to use copper foil cardstock. Now this copper foil cardstock is the brushed copper, which I believe will be retiring at the end of the week, but we do have plain copper gold foil cardstock in the annual catalogue. You'll find that with the other paper products in the specialist paper. So I'm just going to bring in my mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine because it will just fit through this, and it means that I can still do that on camera. So I'm just going to position that I'm going to just slightly offset my plates to make sure that that will feed through easily. I find that that works a treat. And it wobbles all over the desk because it can't use its grippy feet on the grid paper. So let's have a look. Now I always double check that it's cut all the way through by turning it over, and if I see that there are any places where it's not cut all the way through, I pop it back in the sandwich and pop it straight back through. If you have any intricate dies that you find you're having any problems with, they're not cutting all the way back through, the other way of doing the cutting is to actually place the die underneath the cardstock, so this way up, and that will ensure that the pressure, the cutting blade is closer to the roller on the top, so it should increase the pressure and you should get a cleaner cut. So I'm also going to just grab, my foam mat, and I'm going to just grab my brush, which I never have on the end of my Take Your Pick tool because I use the putty end such a lot. I keep meaning to buy another one so I can just have my brush, die brush on the end. I do just usually keep it next to my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. But I find for the intricate dies, the die brush is invaluable. It's just fab. Cuts down that time of poking things out with a pokey tool. Helps it just pop out of the die nice, and all these little bits, because you do have a lot of little bits with this leaf, they just pop out a bit quicker. You can usually give them a flick, which I tend to do over my bin, but hey, so they're just wanting to just flick out now. But isn't that beautiful? That leaf is just stunning, and it looks really great in copper with green. So that's that. I will pop that just out of the way. And of course, I think I've used several times before. I'm just going to grab it now. The old lint roller is fantastic when you've got a die with lots of little bits. And there's bits all over your work surface. You can pick them up. Bits on the floor, and sometimes I actually just, if those little bits won't come out, just press them onto the lint roller, and they sometimes do just pop out a bit easier. There's just one or two left there, look. So that's quite handy. It's a shame Stampin' Up don't sell them. So I'm going to stick that on, but before I do that I'm going to pop a greeting, and I'm just going to turn this into a birthday card quite quickly. I'm going to go back to the Artistically Inked. I love this happy birthday sentiment in here. It's a lovely clean, clear font. It's not too, well, I think it's gender neutral, to coin a phrase. It's not too scrolly or italic. It's just quite nice and neutral. So I'm just going to pop my foil leaf to one side, and I'm going to stamp it using Versamark, and I'm going to heat emboss it with copper. I'll just bring in my tub, my copper embossing powder. I'm just thinking now, is my heat gun plugged in? I think it is, just underneath my desk. Now of course I want to try and get this happy birthday nice and straight. I'm going to come up here. Ooh, try not to get my head under the camera. And you know what? If it's not straight, I can always rescue myself by stamping it on a piece of extra white and sticking it over the top. I think, just glancing at that, that's straight enough. Let's just chuck some embossing powder on, and all will be revealed. I think that's going to be fine. So, lid back on Versamark, and let's get that embossing tool, heat tool out. I've just gone for copper today for a bit of a change. I think I've gone a bit sort of, had enough of gold at Christmas. Used gold quite a lot for Christmas cards. So I'm quite happy with that. And of course, remember, if you know you're going to be heat embossing, you can always stamp some of your background pieces with embossing powder and use heat embossing for them. And I will stick my leaf on the top like that. So let's just finish this card off and I can show you the envelope as well. So let's go back into my card base, which just as a reminder was soft succulent, and I'm going to stick that stamped piece down on my card base, and that really comes alive now. And I'll use multi-purpose liquid glue, I think. Now you can see how the heat embossing has just curled my cardstock. I've heated it from the front. If you want to undo that, you can heat it again from the back, but if you put plenty of glue on, it should easily flatten out. And make sure I've got enough down at the bottom. Just pop that on the base card. So I hope you've had a nice Christmas and a nice break, and you're looking forward to the new year. We've got lots of exciting new products coming up in the new year. We're launching our new mini seasonal catalogue, so going into the spring and summer season. January to June catalogue, a week today, which is really exciting. And I'm going to stick this big leaf down. Let me just get rid of those two or three little bits on the back there. And again, I'm just going to go with multi-purpose liquid glue for the back of this. I quite like the way that this leaf moves. There's a bit of movement with it, so I don't want to stick it entirely flat. So I'm going to concentrate on the top and the bottom, and just a bit of glue on maybe two of the leaves, or maybe the top, the bottom and this leaf, and then we'll see how it looks. So let me just make sure this is in camera. So I'm going to use my multi-purpose liquid glue, and I'm just going to control it, just little dots on some of the areas where there is more cardstock. So just move down, there's a nice area there. I'm not going to worry too much. I might leave this leaf entirely without, and we'll see how we get on with that. Carefully pick that up. What you want to remember with foil is to try not to get any glue on your fingers and transfer it to the front of the foil, because it does tend to smudge. And the other thing with foil is it just needs a bit of encouragement to stick. So I find I do have to use the warmth of my fingers until it really does adhere down. I think it's just that it has a less porous backing. And you see how it's wanting to spring up there. So it just has a slightly less porous backing, so the glue doesn't sink in or soak in to the actual foil cardstock. So using the pressure from your fingers and a bit of warmth from your fingertips, it will stick. I can see I've got some excess glue there, and I don't want to transfer that to the front of the foil. So I'm just going to grab a clean piece of kitchen towel and just try and lift that. And we'll just have a bit of patience. Some things we don't need to rush, do we? Now can you see what I mean by the movement? I quite like the way that these leaves, whilst the stem is stuck down, the tips of the leaves are not, so it just gives it a bit of dimension. So I've not used any foam dimensional pads for anything, any dimension on this card. And of course, if you wanted to stick those down, then you'd put some glue right under the tips. There is enough surface to put some glue under the tips of those leaves, but I quite like that. So that's the card finished. I could put a piece of white inside if I wanted to. Sometimes I do with my cards, I put a piece of white inside to write on depending on the colour. The other reason I put a piece of white inside is to equal out the weight of the card from the front to the back, and it helps it to stand. But in this instance I'm not going to. I'm going to reach for my envelope, which is somewhere. I want a scrap of soft succulent cardstock. I want to get rid of some of this embossing powder from my work surface. Now, where did I put the envelopes? I put them to one side. Here we go. So I want my envelope. I'm going to use some of the Baker's Twine from the Baker's Twine Essentials pack, and this one I'm going to use white. It is a pack and it comes with vanilla, white, black. I think this is grey granite and this is crumb cake. So you get 5 spools in one pack. Let me have a look. It does say 35 yards or 32 metres, but that's obviously divided between the 5 different spools. The other envelope I made, which I've just put to one side and I can't put my hands on, hold on, is it this one? I actually used the grey granite, and this is a smoky slate card envelope, but I think you'll agree that that actually blends really nicely. I could have used white on that. So the way I actually did the brads, I used a piece of scrap card and I used something that's gone out of, oh here we go, a 1/2 inch circle punch, which unfortunately we don't sell anymore. I could also use a small circle die. If I rummage through all my die sets, I would probably find that somewhere there would be a small circle, but I'm sure the majority of crafters have a 1/2 inch circle punch, and that's just to punch out 2 small circles of cardstock. And I want 2 brads, and this is the pack of round and square brads, and they come in black and white, and they are what they say on the tin, square and round, and I'm going to use 2 of the round white ones. They're quite small. And I'm also going to use my take your pick tool, and I'm going to use the pointy end. So this end comes in a spatula and a piercing tool. I'm going to use the piercing tool, and I've chosen to use this piercing tool because it's quite chunky. And I could either use a pencil eraser, or I could use my glue eraser, but I happen to have a handy piece of that dense foam just in a little square, and I find it quite handy, or I found it quite handy because it will fit inside the envelope. The first thing I need to do though is mark the envelope, and I'll use, I didn't do this on the first one, but I'll use my ruler for the straight line, because you can see, maybe you can see the envelope has a seam down the back, so I want to follow the seam, put my ruler against the seam, but I want to come just to one side of it, and I'm going to mark a little pencil mark for the first hole, and then I'm going to just come down and mark another little hole right next to the seam. And I'm going to open up the flap, pop that on the dense foam and go through, and then I'm going to pop the piece of foam inside, and where I've got the second hole, just pierce a hole. And I've not gone all the way through to the thick shaft, I've just put the point through, and that just helps guide. And I'm going to now pierce a hole in the centre, and I'm just going by eye, just in the centre of each of the circle card circles, and it couldn't be easier than that. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to then attach each of the circles to the envelope using the brad. So the first one, I'll just pop the brad through the circle and then pop the brad through the hole, and I'm going to open up the legs of the brad behind, but I'm going to make sure that they're nice and straight, horizontal, and just give that a squeeze to stop it from spinning round. Now the one for the inside, I'm going to do the same, pop the brad through the circle of card, open up the envelope, pop that inside, and then I'm going to faff, which you can't see on camera. In fact, let me just take that back out and give that a bit of a start so I can see what I'm doing inside the envelope. And just pop that through. And we're just going to faff inside and open those legs of the brad out. And then I'm going to give that a bit of a sort of a squeeze so it's nice and still. And it doesn't matter which way the legs splay inside, but what I'm going to also do is I'm going to take another piece of just old washi tape, and it doesn't matter what kind, or you could use sellotape, actually would be fine. And I'm just going to cover those splayed legs inside because I don't want them to catch on my card when I'm putting it inside the envelope, which they might tend to do. So again, that's a bit faffy and you can't see what I'm doing on camera, but I could shine that and see whether you can see that. I've just covered those legs, the points of those legs. I'm going to give it a good press. So what that's given me now is these two circles that I can pop a piece of twine round. It's just, I think it's just a nicer way of gifting this card to somebody, delivering it by hand. And you would just be able to close your envelope. I tend to just give that across and wind it round, but let's pop our card in the envelope. Cross our fingers that that fits. And what I will do when I pop the card in the envelope is I'll probably turn that over so those die cut pieces don't catch on anything when I'm sliding it in, and then I would just carefully feed that into the envelope, and that's just going in there nicely like so, just so I can feed it in. So you can see that's that amended size, that amended width fits nicely in these new envelopes. So there you go, that's my card with envelope, and I ought to actually decorate this with some leaves perhaps, or some of this background, but I hope that you have enjoyed that. I'm just going to take away the grid sheet because it always looks nice. Oh, hi Pam. I've stood up now just to see comments and see who's hopped on. So I've got 4 watchers, so that's nice. So who else is watching me? Pam and Michelle. I'm just trying to see who else, but I can't see any pictures. But anyway, I can see 4 watchers. So thank you for joining me. It was a bit impromptu, and hopefully you've enjoyed just a bit of background stamping technique, that ink blending, and just how lovely a foil leaf and some metallic embossing for that main sentiment just looks so nice. Gender neutral. You could change up the colours if you wanted to make it much more feminine. You could go with some really feminine shades. You could even go with a rainbow shade. You could continue those circles all the way down and play with rainbow colours. So I want to really encourage you to have a play with those techniques and look at these gorgeous envelopes. They're from the new catalogue, January to June minute, and I'll have a look inside and tell you how much they are. Let me just see, because I'm not allowed to show on camera. They are £9.25 for 15 envelopes. So you get 5 of each colour, the soft succulent, the basic white and the smoky slate grey, and they are beautiful with that printed inside, and it's too nice to actually lick and stick. So I have really enjoyed just adapting my closure just by adding that brad. And this is just how I close it. So if we imagine I would have my card inside and I would just wind that twine round in a figure of 8 fashion and pull those tails down underneath, and then I would hand deliver that card with that envelope sealed just like that. So lovely. So, I see Pam and Michelle are Skype crafting whilst they're enjoying their Christmas break. How lovely. Well, I had a Skype chat with my bestie this morning. So, hi Alison. And I've been Skype crafting with my mum pretty much every day, well, talking about crafting anyway. And yeah, it's been great. It's been a nice break, but I'm back to work tomorrow for 3 days. And then I'll be back next week, and I have a lovely project. Shall we give you a sneak peek? I have a lovely project to share with you next week, and it's actually a desk calendar that you can stand like an easel. And I'm going to show you how to use if I can find it, oh, I know why, because it's in the box, ready with the project, Days to Remember stamp set. So next week I'm going to show you how I use the stamp set. So I've had this since it came out with the annual catalogue and only just inked it. So I'm going to show you how to produce a card for each month and how to get good results stamping and how to make this desktop mounted calendar. I've actually amended it because I found this box that I made for the front was too much of a faff, and actually once I'd stood the calendar up like an easel, I decided that this space here was perfect to tuck away the extra months that weren't on display. So I've done away with the box on the front. Why add complication in? But I will be sharing with you, and this was stamped using brand new stamp set, brand new designer series paper from the new mini catalogue. So I'll be sharing that with you next Tuesday, hopefully, God willing, and a stiff breeze behind me. I'll be back next Tuesday. So thanks for tuning in just now, and thank you to Bev, who gave me some lovely comments over on my Instagram feed about the card I made for Nathan, and that really encouraged me to jump on today and just share this with you. So thanks once again, lots of love, keep safe, keep stamping, and speak to you next week. Bye everyone.